You're probably sitting at your desk right now thinking, I need a UPS that actually keeps my equipment alive when the grid flickers, but I don't want to spend a fortune on a gadget that sounds impressive on paper and then sits idle most of the time. That hesitation is real. Most of us have seen those glossy spec sheets and wondered whether the extra wattage, the fancy double conversion label, or the rack mount form factor actually translate into peace of mind in a busy office or a small studio. You want something that's reliable, easy to fit into the space you already have, and worth the money you're putting down, not just a list of numbers. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The VERTIV LIEBERT GXT5 is a 1500VA 1500W online double conversion UPS that sits in a 19-inch rack or can be used as a freestanding tower. At first glance, that sounds like the sweet spot for a lot of small to medium IT setups, but let's dig into what that actually means once you plug it into a real-world environment. First off, the online double conversion part isn't just marketing fluff. In an online UPS, the incoming AC power is converted to DC, then back to AC, which isolates your gear from every ripple, brownout, or momentary interruption. For a network switch, a small server, or a piece of audiovisual equipment that can't tolerate even a few milliseconds of loss, that zero transfer time is a lifesaver. I've spoken with a few data center technicians who say that when they need to guarantee uptime for remote monitoring systems, they never trust line interactive models because of the brief switchover delay. The GXT5's architecture means your devices see a perfectly clean sine wave, regardless of how messy the utility line gets. Now, let's talk about the practical side of fitting this unit into your workspace. The chassis weighs about 70 pounds, so it isn't something you'll toss onto a shelf and forget about. You'll need a solid rack shelf or a sturdy floor space with a level surface. The weight actually works in your favor when it comes to stability. The unit stays put during an earthquake-level vibration, which is something I've heard IT managers mention when they talk about keeping rack equipment from toppling. On the flip side, the heft makes moving it a bit of a chore, especially if you're in a small office that frequently rearranges furniture. If you're planning to swap the UPS between locations often, you might want to consider a lighter, lower capacity model. The GXT5 offers a C14 inlet for the input power and 8 C13 outlets on the back. That outlet count is a nice surprise for a unit in this class. You can power a typical server, a couple of switches, a NAS, and even a small UPS-backed monitor without needing a separate power strip. In practice, that means fewer cables on the floor and a cleaner rack. The downside is that all the outlets are the same C13 type, so you can't directly plug in equipment that uses IEC 60320C19 or larger connectors without an adapter. If your environment includes high-power workstations or larger power supplies, you'll need to factor that adapter cost and extra space. Battery runtime is the metric that most people ask about but rarely see advertised in the spec sheet. With a 1500W rating, the GXT5 can theoretically sustain a full load draw for about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on the age and condition of the batteries. In a real-world scenario, that's enough time to either ride out a short outage or, more importantly, give you a window to gracefully shut down critical servers. If you're running a single 500W server and a few switches, you can expect closer to 20 minutes of backup, a comfortable margin to avoid data loss. However, if you try to push the unit near its 1500W limit, that window shrinks dramatically. So the key is to size your load conservatively. The UPS is generous, but it isn't a limitless battery bank. Ventilation is another practical concern. The GXT5 draws in ambient air from the front and exhausts it out the rear, just like most rack mount equipment. In a cramped rack with other heat-generating devices, you'll notice the fan spin up noticeably when the load approaches 70%. That fan noise can be audible if the UPS is placed in an office rather than a dedicated server room. In my conversations with a few small business owners, they've mentioned that the hum is acceptable during normal work hours but becomes a mild annoyance in quiet environments. If you're setting this up in a recording studio or a conference room, you might need to think about acoustic dampening or placing the UPS in a separate cabinet. One of the strengths that often gets overlooked is the management interface. The GXT5 ships with a basic LCD panel that shows load percentage, battery status, and alarm conditions. While it's not as flashy as a touchscreen, The information it provides is clear enough for most administrators to monitor health without logging into a separate software suite. The unit also supports optional network management cards, which can be a real boon.